Hello, Assalamu alaikum. I am Dr. Farooq Javed and I will be discussing the head trauma, including GCS calculation. So, this is the outline what we will be discussing in this lecture. So, first of all, what is head trauma? Head trauma can be caused by different type of methods. Like the most common cause of the head trauma is road traffic accidents. Even the falls can be seen in very young patient or the elderly patient very frequently. Similarly, different kinds of violence or the explosives or the natural disaster, they can also contribute to the head trauma. So there are different classification of head trauma. They can be classified according to the primary or secondary type of head injuries. They can be classified into open or closed type of head injuries, diffuse or focal, similarly hemorrhagic or non-hemorrhagic type of head injuries. First of all, what is primary versus secondary head injuries? So primary head injuries, they occur at the time of the impact or the head or at the time of trauma. So there are different examples for the primary head trauma injuries. There can be fractures, there can be extradural hematoma, there can be subdural hematoma. But what are the secondary type of head injuries? They occur later as a consequence of the primary head injuries. So their examples can be cerebral edema, cerebral ischemia, or cerebral infarcts. So secondary injuries always follow the primary type of injuries. So how do we divide the open or the closed type of head injuries? Generally, we take skin as the factor to divide open or the closed type of injuries. For example, if any limb injury is there and skin is intact, we call it closed type of injury. And if it is broken or uh, teared, so we call it the open type of injuries. But in the head injuries there are different definitions. Few people define it according to the penetration of the bone. If bone fracture is there, we call it open type of injury, and if bone is intact, then we call it the closed type of injury. But few people also take dura as the defining matter. So if the dura is penetrated, they call it the open injuries, and if dura is closed, they call it the closed type of injuries. So what are different types of brain hemorrhages? So brain hemorrhages can be different, like epidural hematomas. We also call them the extradural hematoma. Then we have the subdural hematoma. We can have the subarachnoid hemorrhage, intracerebral hemorrhage. Even the intraventricular bleeds can be there. So we will further discuss what are these different hematomas. So coming to the presentation of a head injury patient, they usually present with different symptoms, and symptoms can be very mild to very severe. So the common presentations are unconsciousness of different durations. Then we can have the mild or moderate or severe type of headache. Then we can have the simple nauseas or repeated vomitings or multiple episodes of vomitings. So we can also have the dizziness, we can have seizure, we simply call them the fits, and then we can also have the different type of neurological deficits. Neurological deficits can be weakness of any limb or all the limbs. There can be speech problems, so there can be memory problems. So these are the neurological deficits. Similarly, there are late effects or different types of effects on the psychological impact of the patients. So there can be slurring of the speech or confusion or agitation. Then can be memory or concentration problems. Then we can also have the amnesia about event prior to the injury. So this is the very common symptom, amnesia about event prior to the injury. So they can they can present with this. So there are few symptoms that should alarm a surgeon or a physician or a doctor uh, when patient present with the head injury. So what are different these red flag symptoms? So unconsciousness, seizures, repetitive vomiting, slurring of speech, or any neurological deficits. So these should alert our doctor to undergo a thorough or detailed investigation to rule out any head injury. So you always keep these red flags in your mind when you are dealing with the head injury patient. So what should be the initial management? So management starts at the emergency department or at the site of injury. So, so ideal thing to start with in the management is the ATLS protocol. So what is ATLS protocol? This is Advanced Trauma Life Support. So this is a protocol that is designed to simultaneously uh, assess or examine the patient as well as treat them. So this is a very extensive program or a very extensive protocol program that should be followed in all type of injuries, not only the head injury but any type of trauma, including the limb trauma, chest trauma, abdominal trauma, pelvic trauma. So this should be followed in every type of trauma. So there are different components of the advanced trauma life support, like the three commonly used components are the primary survey, secondary survey, and tertiary survey. So what includes the primary survey? Uh, there are five parts of the primary survey. So it goes from airway, including cervical spine stabilization, to breathing, to circulation, to disability and exposure. There are further components of each of these parameter. I'm not going into detail of that, but you must remember that the primary survey includes five major components. Then the secondary survey. Secondary survey is a head to toe detailed examination. Once you are done with the primary survey, once you are done with the initial basic investigation to rule out different types of head injuries, and you resuscitate patient in the primary survey, then you go for the detailed survey or the secondary survey, and this must include all the system, including the including the neurological system, then the respiratory, gastrointestinal, genitourinary, or the musculoskeletal system. But the focus should be on the particular type of injuries. If you are dealing with the head injury, you should particularly focus on the neurological examination. Then how do we evaluate a patient with the head injury? So there are different methods to evaluate the head injury patient. The top of the list is the neurological examination. Neurological examination should include the GCS scoring. We call it the Glasgow Coma scale. Then we should also check the pupils of the patient. We should also check the limbs or the neurological deficit of the patient or the neurological status of the patient. Then in radiology, we have different types of radiological investigation, like we have the X-rays or the CT scans, or even the MRI can be done for the patient of the head injury. So third type of evaluation includes intracranial pressure monitoring. We will further go into this uh, in detail. So how do we assess neurological status? We do it by calculating the GCS score. GCS is the widely used scoring system for all type of head injuries, and it is very relevant for the head injury. So score has three parts: eye response, and then the verbal response and the motor response. The total score is 15, and in eye response, we have a total score of 4. If patient is having a spontaneous eye opening, we give it a score of 4. And if the eye opening is not spontaneous but he or she opens to the speech, it will be 3. And if he or she is opening only to the pain, then we give it a score of 2. And if there is no response even after the pain, we give it a score of 1. Then going to the verbal response. If a patient is well oriented to time, place, and person and responding verbal very consciously, we give it a score of 5. If a patient is talking but he is confused, we give it a score of 4. If he is uh, not able to complete the sentences and only using different words, we give it a score of 3. And if there is only incomprehensible sound, we give it a score of 2. And if there is no response, we give it a score of 1. Then coming to the motor response, if a patient is obeying the command he or she is given, so this is a score of 6. If patient is not obeying command but he is able to move or and he's able to move to localize the pain you are giving, so it is a score of 5. But if after giving pain he is withdrawing uh, from the obnoxious stimulus, or the pain, we give it a score of 4. And if there is abnormal flexion, we call it decorticate, this is 3. And if there is abnormal extension or decerebrate posture, we give it a score of 2. And there is no response, we give it a score of 1. So maximum score is 15, and the minimum score we can have with none of these responses, this is this will be a score of 3. So coming to the radiological investigation, CT scan is the gold standard for uh, is gold standard nowadays for the head injury assessment. So we go for CT scan brain plane, and we go for the axial views of the CT scan. So there are two types of CT scan windows. One is a tissue window or the brain window, and in the picture you can see the upper three rows are the tissue windows or the brain windows, where you can appreciate different structures of the brain matter from supratentorial to the infratentorial components. And in the bone window, in the lower three rows, you can only appreciate the bone and not the brain. So this is the bone window, and bone window is helpful to assess or localize different fractures. And coming to the ICP monitoring in a patient, especially when the patient is unconscious, and CT scan is not helpful in diagnosing any type of injury, especially in the cases where there is non-hemorrhagic type of injuries, and patient is having a GCS of 8 or below. So to monitor the ICP, we go for the ICP monitoring. We simply pass a drain into the ventricle. This is the most common method to monitor the ICP, passing a ventricular drain and then attaching it to the monitor which measure the intraventricular pressure. This is the ideal method. So there are other methods as well. You can pass a catheter into the parenchyma, brain parenchyma, and also monitor the brain parenchymal pressure. So here you can see the difference between the EVD and parenchymal monitor. In EVD, we simply make a burr hole, commonly at the frontal area, and we pass a catheter into the ventricle and then monitor the ventricular pressure. In the parenchymal, we make a burr hole anywhere, and we pass a probe into the parenchyma and directly measure the pressure from the parenchyma. So this will give the intracranial pressure. Commonly, the intracranial pressure is below 15, and we have to maintain that pressure. If the pressure rises, we have to manage patient accordingly by non-surgical or surgical methods. So what are different types of head trauma that can cause the hemorrhages? So hemorrhages can be divided into the epidural or the subdural hematomas, or as we already seen, we can also say that there can be intraventricular hemorrhages, cerebral contusions can be there, or subarachnoid hemorrhages can be. The major type of hemorrhages are epidural or the subdural hematoma, so we have to differentiate between both of these. So epidural hematoma comes from the middle meningeal artery, and there is a collection of blood into the extradural space. So it will give a biconvex shape on the CT scanners. And in the case of subdural hematoma, there is leakage or the bleeding from the bridging veins, and it will be collected in the subdural space. And the subdural space is a continuous space from frontal lobe to the occipital lobe. So there can be a large hematoma that extends from the frontal to the occipital lobe, or there can be small hematomas depending on the severity of the head injury, and it gives a concave shape or the moon shaped, so that follows the shape of the bone. So this will be the subdural hematoma. So on the picture in the left side, you can see there is a subarachnoid hemorrhage. Subarachnoid hemorrhage is when there is bleeding inside the subarachnoid space. Subarachnoid space extend from the bony surface to the brain parenchyma in a finger-like projection or the projectile manner. So if there is hemorrhage that is uh, finger-like coming from the bony side and going into the parenchyma, this is most likely a subarachnoid hemorrhage. You will see on the CT scans as well in the coming slides. So there can be also a parenchymal hemorrhage. You can see on the right side of your screen that the parenchymal, or we call it the hemorrhagic contusion as. as well. So these are the traumatic type of parenchymal injuries or the parenchymal hemorrhages. Then we also have the interventricular hemorrhage. So how do we see these type of hemorrhages on the CT scan? In the picture A, you can appreciate a large hyperdense area on the CT scan on the right side. So it is a biconvex and it is hyperdense and it is not going from frontal to the occipital and it is only localizing to the parieto-occipital area. So this is most likely a epidural hematoma and it is pushing or compressing the brain away from the hematoma. So this is the epidural hematoma. Going to the picture B, as you can see, there is a large hematoma that is extending from frontal to the occipital lobe and it is a concave shaped. So this is most likely acute subdural hematoma. So you can see the difference between the two. One is biconvex and other one is concave or following the shape of the bone. Then in picture C, here you can see this is the subarachnoid hemorrhage as the arrow marks. There are small hyperdense areas or the finger-like projections that are coming from the bony side and going into the brain. So this is the subarachnoid hemorrhage. To the new person, it is very difficult to appreciate the subarachnoid hemorrhage at times, but when there is a large amount of subarachnoid hemorrhage, you can easily appreciate it. In the picture D, you can see there is a parenchymal injury or the parenchymal hematoma is there on the both sides, especially if you can see on the left side of the picture D, there is a large hematoma that is inside the parenchyma and this is the hemorrhagic contusion or simply contusions. Going to the picture E, here you can see ventricle are not visible, but there but you can appreciate there is hyperdense area inside the ventricle. So this is hyperdense area is the blood. So blood when collected inside the ventricle, we call it the ventricular hemorrhage or interventricular hemorrhage. So they can take up this shape, or if there is a hematoma is small, they can only settle down in the lower part of the ventricle, that is the occipital horn. So how do we manage these kind of uh, head trauma injuries? We go for the non-surgical or the surgical method. Non-surgical methods are usually follow different types of treatment. Like we go for the IV fluids, we give mannitol, we give anti-epileptic drugs, we do the head elevation, so that the uh, ICP is not raised inside the cranial cavity. So we go for the analgesics or even the sedations can be given, and we take care of the nutrition of the patient. We take care of the intake and output of the patient. We take care of the general monitoring or the vitals of the patient. So these are the non-surgical methods to manage a head trauma patient. Even we, when needed, if the disease is low or there are problems with the breathing, we can go for the endotracheal intubation and for the ventilation support. So coming to the surgical treatment is usually given in the cases of where there is a large hematoma or the hematoma is causing a midline shift and we are suspecting that this kind of hematoma is causing the patient low GCS. So we go for the surgery. Small hematomas can be managed non-surgically, but depending on the location, depending on the size of the hematoma, depending on the midline shift, so they are divided into non-surgical and non and the surgical methods. So uh, in a surgical treatment, what we do, we go for a large scalp incision. We call it a question mark incision or the trauma flap. We make a question mark shaped incision starting from the temporal area just anterior to the tragus of the ear, and we go up to the occipital posteriorly and then follows and go up to the frontal lobe uh, just behind the hairline. So give a large scalp incision, and once uh, we cut we cut the skin and subcutaneous tissue and we detect muscle, we reach the bone of the patient and we make different burr holes uh, depending on the location of the hematoma. We make burr hole and then join them, and we remove the bone. Once we remove the bone, we can see the dura. And if there is a epidural hematoma, we can see the hematoma just outside the dura, and we simply evacuate it, and we control the bleeding site. As we already discussed, the common bleeding site is the middle meningeal artery, so we take care of the middle meningeal artery, and we stop the bleeding from that, and we evacuate hematoma and simply close the bone and uh, apply stitches to the scalp. But in cases of subdural hematoma, we can also open the dura in any manner. We can give the cruciate incision, we can give U-shaped incision, and we open the dura and we evacuate hematoma again, and we uh, control if there is any aggressive bleeding or ongoing bleeding. So we control that, and then we again close the dura, and we deplace bone and apply stitches, or we can also apply screws, and then we simply close it. So this is the type of surgery we usually go for the uh, intracranial hematomas. We can also put our drain if needed. We can place the drain subdural, extradural, or simply into the scalp, so that if there is repeated hematoma, so that can drain later on. So that's all from my side for today. And if you have any question, you can leave a message on my these emails. Thank you so much.